Hello, welcome to another edition of Prove All Things. Want to thank everybody who's joined us today, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, X, formerly known as Twitter, or on your phone, tablet. We are happy to have you joining us today. I'm joined by co-host Mike James. How you doing, Mike?
Hey Jeff, doing well.
It looks like we have another. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. One editorial note from last week's program. Feedback from one of the viewers who was interpreting something my brother had said about protein. That my brother was implying that a large amount of protein was good for older folks. Not necessarily. When my brother was talking about getting a lot of protein, he was, in his mind, he had the intention that he was speaking about people who are athletic, working out regularly. No doubt about it, as you get older, your caloric intake is going to go down. But the main point he wanted to make was try to get more calories from protein as you get older than the carbs, because of what protein does for the body.
Okay.
So if anyone has any questions about that, send me an email and I'll make sure my brother gives you any details you want about that.
All right. Great.
One other announcement, Jeff. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Go ahead.
We have our monthly cell meeting today, this week, this Sabbath. So anyone who is out there at home alone, you don't have a church group to meet with on Saturdays, please shoot me a note. We do a monthly cell group meeting online, and I can get you connected to that chat meeting if you're interested.
All right, great. Well, I wanted to announce that we have another co-host joining today as well, and here she is.
Hey, she made it. Hey, Olivia, we're sorry. We realized a little late that the Google Chrome browser works better for this program.
Hey, I learned something new today.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like to use the Google Chrome browser, but it's what they made this program work with. So I guess it's the only time I ever use it is when we're doing the program.
We're good.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us as our third co-host.
Right.
We're gonna really have how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing good. I mean, this winter is awesome, so I couldn't be better.
So awesome means it's not as tough.
I'm still waiting for winter to show up.
Okay.
No snow. It's February. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
That's great.
And where do you live at again?
I'm Hamilton, Ontario.
Okay.
I'll be your Canadian correspondent.
Yeah. Great. All right. So we have 3 co-hosts today, so we're going to be able to ask, I guess, additional questions, and definitely want to get everybody's comments from the chat. And then people are agreeing with you, Mike, in the chat that too much protein can cause problems. And yes, I think that this is a clarification. Well, we have a disclaimer at the beginning of our program, so we can say, well, we got a disclaimer.
Right. We need that disclaimer. Yeah.
Because if we're here to discuss things. Always do your own research is a good thing to look at when you're on here today. And speaking of research, I'm going to bring in our guest today, Mr. Skip Martin. How you doing, Skip?
Good. I dressed up for today.
You sure that's not the Grinch?
That's right.
You're the mean one, Mr. Grinch, right?
Be good today, Skip.
I'll try. Try. It's hard. It's hard for me to be good. My wife, and we've only been married 51 years, and she says that she said, "Did your parents never give you any attention when you were growing up?"
Or do you have brothers and sisters, Skip?
I have a sister.
Okay.
She has a brother, but I don't have one.
Okay.
All right, Skip. So just it's been a little while since you've been on. Can you give some people just a background of where you're from, what you're doing, those type of things?
Well, I'm an Arkansan. I live in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and I've been in the Churches of God since 1974. Oh, and y'all will notice I have a little swelling here. I have an allergic reaction. It seems to pop up every time Mike James gets around me. And But I woke up about 3 and it was swelling, so I went in and took some medicine. Anyway, I've been in the Church of God since about 1974. In '78, I left the worldwide and went into the Church of God International, and I've been involved with the Church of God International since 1978, I guess. We have a home fellowship here in Jonesboro. It's all online. There's nobody else in Jonesboro that attends with us. So we do it all online. There's about anywhere from 15 to 20 people across the, well, I'm going to say across the world, because we've got one couple in India, but 90% of us are in the United States. And we get together. We have an interactive church service every Sabbath, and we have a long service. We're not limited like, most churches are limited to the speakers, limited to an hour or whatever. But ours is interactive, and so it just goes on for however long it needs to go on. And our people don't hesitate to tell me when I'm doing a presentation, and that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. We don't pull any punches. We don't get our feelings hurt, and so on. So that's basically it. We love this interactive online thing. It just works out great for us.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's good to have you back on, Skip. It's good seeing you. Definitely, you're bringing some color to the program today
Yeah.
in many ways. So, what is your topic today going to be on?
I'm going to talk about what I call an introduction to the prophets of the Old Testament. And if you all ask me back, it'll end up being a series.
Okay.
And it's funny. It was my plan to go through the prophets, but it doesn't take very long before all of a sudden you're in a history of the of the northern tribes, and after the split, you're in a history mode. So what our group has said to me is that they have learned so much more about what was going on back then because of our study, not because of me, but because of the research and the study that we've done. It's just really brought the Hebrew scriptures to life for us. So anyway, that's it. So
okay.
Well,
Let's go ahead, Skip, and kick it off. Let's get into it.
Okay. Well, this is a study that we did with our home fellowship. We started about 2.5 years ago, and by the way, we're not finished yet. It's a rather long. Yeah, that's right, Blake. It's a rather long study because we take like a chapter a week as a general rule. And if you all want to have me back and have it as a series, it could be as long as 5 years. But we've studied all or most of the prophets and their prophetical books. We have melded that into a 2-year study of the history of ancient Israel and ancient Judah. And the commentaries, and I told Mike and Jeff a while ago, I said, you all will not be surprised that I'm going to disagree with some of the scholars, so-called scholars, some of my home fellowship guys are on here giving me a hard time already. It didn't take long. There's Michael Deering. So we start off with the non-writing prophets, and it takes about 100 years before the first writing prophets show up. And there are disagreements among scholars about what year these, a particular prophet may have written. For instance, Obadiah. Obadiah is believed, and this is one of my favorites. Obadiah is believed to have written his book about 850 BC or 586 BC. So unless Obadiah lived for 300 years, one of those groups is wrong.
Yeah.
So you have to.
One thing I've seen, I guess, when studying scriptures, is that scholars will usually put something later if there's a fulfilled prophecy that's happened. So they want to say, well, the person that wrote it already knew that was going to happen.
Right, and we've discussed that a lot. As a matter of fact, on Mike's Wednesday morning coffee show, I think, didn't we talk about omniscience, or I never can pronounce that word, whatever. But anyway, so I'm going to do my best to do this in chronological order. The problem is there are a lot of different chronologies. So here's what we have done. One of our members gave us or found a really good timeline. And this looks like a lot of, oh my goodness gracious. The red up here are non-Israelite, non-Judah kings and so on, that shows when they reigned and where they were from and all of that. The yellow here on top, this is the nation of Israel after the split. So you can see it starts with Jeroboam the first. The green is the nation of Judah after the split. It starts with Rehoboam. And so this is the timeline that I'm going to use as we go through here. Now, who is a prophet seems to be very subjective among scholars. My list would include Joseph and Moses as prophets.
Scholars, so you have a definition of a prophet that you use?
Yep. I'll get there in a minute.
Okay.
And so my list would include Joseph and Moses. And if Joseph was considered a prophet, then he would be a non-writing prophet. There aren't any Joseph books around. But Moses, if I understand how the Bible works, Moses wrote some stuff. He wrote 5 books, and there was a lot of prophetic material in those. So I would certainly include Moses as a writing prophet, but scholars don't. That just blows me away. I don't understand, and I'll talk about the criteria in a minute.
Is it possibly because there's dispute over who wrote the first 5 books? Is that why, or?
I don't know. All I know is they leave him off the list.
Okay.
And when I say they, I use word search Bible software. Now they've sold the Logos, so I'm using Logos. And they don't list, neither one of them list Moses as a prophet. And I'm like, oh, okay, really? All right. So The first group of prophets were the non-writing prophets
Mm-hmm.
and the non-literary prophets, and I'll probably mix those words up: non-literary, literary, and non-writing. And these first two, I'm like, how do you guys get this? Samuel is a non-writing prophet, the guy that wrote a good portion of First Samuel, maybe Second Samuel.
Yeah.
Nathan wrote a good portion of the two books, but yet they're considered non-writing prophets. So, like I say, the criteria these scholars, so-called scholars, use, it just is beyond me to figure it out. But now these last two, I think we all would agree, are non-writing prophets.
Mm-hmm.
Elijah and Elisha had a lot to say, they had a lot to do, but they didn't write books that we know of. You know, there's no writings from them. So I'm a little shocked at Samuel and Nathan. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
Elijah and Elisha were men of action, and Elijah in particular was a man of few words.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of my favorites. He walks into to Ahab's throne room, I guess, and says, "Ahab, it's not going to rain for 3 years. See you." You know, he's out. He's gone.
Short and sweet.
He is short and sweet. He doesn't pull any punches,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a man of few words. Now, see, I fit half of that. I don't pull any punches, but I don't think anybody would accuse me of ever being a man of few words, especially my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Elijah is probably considered to be the greatest prophet. You know, there's Michael says one learns that Yahweh is consistent, and so anyway, y'all can read what Michael has to say. All right, another prophet is a man who's called a prophet, but he's not mentioned as a prophet in any list. Is a guy named Enoch.
Enoch, yeah.
Enoch. Well, okay, Enoch is called a prophet by Jude. Jude says it was also about these men that Enoch in the seventh generation prophesied. Well, if you prophesied, doesn't that qualify you as a prophet? But he didn't write a book,
mm-hmm.
and we don't know where this is written down.
Yeah.
You know, behold, Yahweh comes with many thousands of his holy ones.
Mm-hmm.
We know that's going to happen, but
right.
You know, we have no evidence of where Enoch may have written that down. So that would make Enoch the earliest of the prophets. And he is, after all, a great grandson of Noah. Now, assuming that Adam and Eve were created, and some people may disagree with this, and that's fine, put it in the chat, somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 BC. I'm not a young earth person, believer. But it was over 5,000 years possibly before the first official prophet is mentioned. And you know who that was? Deborah, a female, one of the judges. She's the first prophet mentioned in the scriptures. Okay. So, and we'll get to Deborah if you all have me back the next time. Okay. So the writing prophets are divided into two groups: the minor prophets and the major prophets. Mm-hmm. Now, the prophets, major and minor, are determined by the length of their books, not what they said. In other words, Hosea's writings were not any less important than Isaiah's. And so here are the 12 minor prophets, and we have just gotten into studying about Zephaniah in our home fellowship. And I tell you what, I've read Zephaniah before, but after the 2-year introduction, if you will, to what's going on in the nation of Judah, Zephaniah is wow. He's got a lot of stuff to say that I never had really paid much attention to him before. Mm-hmm. But anyway, okay. So these are the 12 minor prophets. All right. Next are the major prophets, which are Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel. Now, some of the scholars, and here again, I don't understand, they include Lamentations as a major prophet. And Lamentations is not a person. So I don't see how Lamentations can be a prophet. It's a prophetical book.
Right.
It may be more of a historical book than a prophetical book, because it tells you what happened to the people in Jerusalem during the siege that the Babylonians, they surrounded them for a couple of years, and they didn't have anything to eat. And I don't want to get into what they ended up eating. You can, we'll have scriptures on that a little bit later on. So now back to Jeff's question a while ago. What is a prophet? The Hebrew word for prophet is nabi. N-A-B-I is the way you would spell it in English. And it's translated in the King James Version, it's translated prophet 312 times.
Okay.
It's translated prophecy once, and then that prophesy once, and prophet once. So I think the consensus of the translators, at least the King James translators, is that nabi means prophet. Okay. And then Peter has something to say about this. He says, for no prophecy was ever made by an act of human will, but men moved by the Holy Spirit spoke from God. And so the definition of a Hebrew, there's a dual definition. One is, yes, they say things that are going to happen in the future, hadn't happened yet. But two, and I think the more important role of a prophet is that they're an inspired speaker. That God has given them a message, and they go and they say, hey guys, if you all don't straighten up, then this is going to happen. And most of the time, I think all of us have read enough in the Old Testament to know they didn't straighten up. An exception to that, at least for a minute or two, was Nineveh, when Jonah went to them. And Jonah's another prophet, by the way, that's not considered a prophet. And yet he went and he stood in the gates of Nineveh and said, 30 days, you boys are in trouble. And so in this study, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of people that make prophecies, that come in, that do something and then disappear.
Hey, Skip, just a quick question. Some people think prophecy just deals with the future, but it deals with what was happening right at that time when these prophets spoke also, right?
Yes, not only right, but one of the most important things that we can do as we read scripture is to ask ourselves, what did the writer or speaker, let me rephrase, what did the people think that he or she was saying? How did it apply to them? We jump forward, we may jump forward 6,000, 8,000, 100,000 years. We don't know when Christ is coming back, but it's so important to ask ourselves, what did those people think that, or believe that he meant? Now, and an example of that, I'll just, as you all know, I'll get out of my notes. The word hell, for instance, there are three words translated hell: Gehenna, Hades, and Tarturo. Okay, all three have a totally different definition. Hades means pit, hole, grave. Gehenna means Valley of Hinnom, which was the trash dump outside of Jerusalem. And then Tarturo is only used once, and it has to do with some angels. And by the way, I use the word messenger rather than angels, because angels is a transliteration. It's not a translated word. and messenger is a much better translation. It's an accurate translation. But when traditional Christians, as a general rule, read the word hell, they're reading the word Gehenna that's been translated into the word hell. And so it brings up the connotation of ever burning fire, tortured forever, upside down, whatever the case may be, when it simply means the trash dump outside of Jerusalem. And when they threw an object in there, it burned up. It didn't burn forever. Logs don't have eternal life. So anyway, sorry I got off, but in many of God's messages through prophets, there's a why and a what involved.
Mm-hmm.
The prophet says, here's what's going to happen, and here's why, and you guys need to straighten up. And if you'll quit doing the why, then I'm not going to bring like with Nineveh, they got a reprieve for a little while because they repented, they straightened up.
Mm-hmm.
And so, God says, because you have or haven't done this, then this is going to happen. So if the people, and that would include us, would start or stop with the why, God, there are things said about our day today, and there's a why, and we need to pay attention, and we need to straighten up. We need to repent of our sins, and God, may give us a break. Mike?
Hey, yeah, I'm just checking the chat box to see if there are any questions that we could handle while you're going. Let me start. Let me start with Olivia, Skip, so you can think about this and you can respond to it also. But Olivia, Life Lessons is asking us, please explain the benefits of studying the writings of the prophets. So you got a couple benefits, Olivia, and then I'm going to let Skip handle that.
Definitely. Otherwise, we wouldn't have it in scripture. But the messages of the prophets were not popular with anybody. And I don't think they'd be even popular with us today if we had prophets today. But I think that studying the prophets gives us, as Skip was saying, the why God's saying these things, what the response should be, and when the response is not appropriate, what the consequences are. So yeah, those are good points. It's interesting too that as you were explaining, Skip, the word prophet being Naba, that's a picture of a seed and a house. And it's something that is brought from inside out, like the seed produces fruit, right? So the prophets are bringing forth something that God is revealing to them and is putting it out there for them to see. And they weren't popular. They were lonely guys.
No, I know Mike and Jeff know my relationship with Ron Dart, but Ron used to say, if you see a prophet coming down the road, it ain't going to be good news. Prophets weren't sent to say, boy, I tell you, Mike, you guys have really been doing a great job. I'm so proud of you. That was generally not the role of a prophet.
Hey, Skip, we've had a few prophets then give us feedback.
Mm-hmm.
True.
I've had some prophets when I was working in Tyler show up and came into Tyler. One wanted to see Vance and give him a message. So yeah.
Well, I know Ted Armstrong and Ron have both told me that they've had the 4-2 witnesses come in and visit with them before.
Hey, Skip, another question in the box there. Someone's asking if Saul was a prophet.
I'm going to mention that Saul did prophesy. There is a case, and I have it in my notes. Maybe the next time. Of course, now you're going to have to invite me back.
Yeah.
Against now let's not vote. Don't let the group out here in the chat vote. But anyway, okay.
So, Skip, just for a second, Skip, would you say there's a difference between prophets, the ones called to the office of a prophet, and someone who just prophesies occasionally? Is there a difference, or are they both the same?
I think they're the same, but their message may be well. Let's just use minor prophet and major prophet. Their message may be a little shorter. Because one of the things that I found as we started going through this, as I was doing the research with our group, is that there must be 30 different men, as a general rule, that came in, gave a prophetic message, and hit the road. And like Elijah with Ahab, it's not going to rain for 3 years. So yeah.
But for a person like Saul, King Saul, could we actually classify him as a prophet, or was that evidence that God had anointed him?
Yes, to both, I would say. God made a donkey talk.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
I guess I could say the same thing about Saul, but I won't. I'm not going there. I'm not going there. But yes, were that? What have I done there? I just have to say yes. They did. Saul did prophesy. He did.
Yeah.
And the men, his soldiers that were there said, well, even Saul is a prophet,
Mm-hmm.
or can prophesy. I can't remember exactly what was said. So yeah, please keep asking questions. And so this is the way we do our home fellowship. You just jump in. I'm Jeff. I'm going to get you kicked off here.
Okay.
Be like a Democrat voting early and often. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I want to go back and start at the book of Judges. They ruled Israel from about 1350 to 1100 BC. And why Judges? Well, I think it shows a need for special men and women to confront Israel with their mistakes, and later on to confront Judah with their yes, Belinda. And if you all will remind me, I'll put a link into our Saturday morning service.
Yeah, Skip. Jeff can put up your email, and Belinda can reach out to you there. But if Jeff has that, he'll put it up later.
Yeah, I need your name and your email address is all I need, and I will add you to our mailing list. Okay, when Joshua and his generation died, there were no leaders in Israel. And if you remember, this is before the split. What's wrong here? Oh, there it is. It's Jeff. It's not coming. Okay. All right. So the people served, and by the way, we use Yahweh. We're not sacred name people, but we do use that one Hebrew word. The people served Yahweh all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders who so all the days of Joshua who followed Moses, and the elders that were with Joshua. When Joshua died, he was 110 years old, and says all that generation also were gathered to the fathers, and there arose another generation who did not know Yahweh, who did not know the Lord. Sorry, I got the hiccups. Nor yet the work that he had done for Israel. Now, why would this be? Wouldn't it be because the parents didn't teach the kids? Wouldn't it be because they didn't pass along the knowledge that they had gotten? Their parents had been slaves in Egypt, and so their parents just apparently didn't teach them. So then in verse 11 it says, "Then the sons of Israel did evil in the sight of Yahweh and serve Baals. I've learned that it's not Baal, it's supposed to be pronounced Baal. And that's a hard habit to break, folks. Says they forsook Yahweh, the Elohim of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt. They forsook him. They quit following him, and they followed other gods from among the gods of the people who were around them. This is a tendency that the nation of Israel has had during their entire existence. And this is why the northern tribes were taken into captivity by the Assyrians. This is why the southern tribes were taken into captivity by the Babylonians, because they forsook following God. Now, one of the things that, and of course, we're way far along in the timeline I showed you a minute ago. But one of the things that really gets me is that by the time Israel, the northern tribes, were at the point where God says, I use a phrase, everybody in our home fellowship knows about it. Everybody out of the pool. You're out, gone. They had statues of Baal and Asherah poles in the temple. Mm-hmm. And it just, I'm like, how does this happen? They're human, and we humans are really not really smart, and we like to go with what's the most fun. And so, Mike, are you talking?
No, that was me. I was just going to ask, Skip, wasn't it the responsibility of the priesthood to do the teaching? And so here, like you were saying, now we're finding these statues in the temple where the priests served.
Absolutely. Well, what you find as you go through, and particularly the northern tribes, the first thing that Jeroboam did was to kick the true Levites and priests out,
right,
and put anybody that, the way I've looked at it, is anybody that was willing to pay him enough became a priest. And so, yes, it was their job, but so many of them moved back to the south because they said, I'm not putting up with this. Mm-hmm. And so the priests themselves became idolatrous. And somebody was asked a while ago, what was the value of studying? There's part of the value of studying these Old Testament scriptures about the nation of Israel and the nation of Judah. We can see what happened to them. Another thing that they did, which will ring a bell, I think, with all of you all, is that they would mix the worship of the true God with the worship of Baal, and the worship of Asherah. And they would go out and they would build groves, places to go to worship the pagan gods. Mm-hmm. And so they were mixing the worship of God with the worship of their pagan little g gods. Mm-hmm. God, God's got a lot more patience than I've got. Mm-hmm. I would have kicked him out a long time before he did. They're lucky that that God's not asking me my opinion. And by the way, I know Mike and Jeff know this, but I do check my emails every morning to see if God has written me asking me my opinion about these things. I have yet to see one. Mm-hmm. God doesn't seem to care about what my opinion is. Anyway, so
maybe that's an important point, though, Skip, that the fact that God is patient, and that if he's so patient, then maybe we need to be also.
Yeah, that's true, and I know some of the people in the chat, and two of you all do, and Olivia, you may have been around me enough in Mike's Wednesday morning thing to know that I used to be the world's biggest jerk back in '74 through about '77 or '78. I knew everything about. there was about the scriptures, and if you didn't agree with me, you were an idiot, and I didn't mind telling you that you were an idiot. And can't you read? It's right there in the scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me 20 years to move out of that mode into where I am right now, where God has blessed me with the ability to worship with anybody who believes in Jesus Christ. That's my one criteria. If you believe in Jesus Christ, we've got something in common.
Well, it sounds like you were kind of like a prophet starting out, pointing out the scripture where you're wrong. Sounds just
I was
very
about as
prophetic.
I was about as popular as a prophet. I can tell you that. So after Joshua died and the leaders that were around him died, God raised up judges, to teach the people and to lead them into the true worship of God.
Mm-hmm.
And what we find happening with those judges is that when the judge was powerful, was authoritative, the people listened, the people obeyed. But the minute that judge died, we're gone. We're going back. It's so much more fun to worship this other way. God just has too many rules. And I think a lot of people look at him that way today. They look at the God of the Old Testament as different from the God of the New Testament. I'm sure you all have run across people that, I don't like that old God of the Old Testament. He's mean and cruel. And I'm like, well, my dog came in to join us. He's just, evil, wicked, mean, and bad, and nasty as it goes. But he's the same God, and he has the same law and the same rules.
Right.
And the rules are just so that we can live a better life. Yeah.
I've been in my Bible study. You can in the CGI app. You can go through and read a daily Bible reading, and so I'm kind of stuck in Leviticus, going through the Bible reading. And when you read about all the rules about sacrifices and all the details, and it's complicated. Just I'm trying to make a picture of it and think about it. It was so very complicated, all the different sacrifices, the details. And I wonder if sacrificing the ball was a super easy or something, or these other gods. There was like an easy way to go because God's way was very, very precise.
Good point, and I'll play off of that a little bit. If I'm an Israelite and I'm going to follow the laws of the sacrifice, I'm going to take my calf in, and the Levite's going to cut it up and keep 20% of it, 10 for themselves, and then they're going to burn 10 of it up, and then I only get home with 80% of it. Where if I'm worshiping Baal, I go in and I say, hey, I've got a calf at home I'm going to butcher, and you guys aren't getting any of it. I know that's kind of a silly analogy, but you may be right. It may.
Because I guess it had to be. I was thinking easier or more fun, because if not, they would just why would they quit the true God? And it sounds like the Baal worship was the party.
Well, and you all know what peer pressure's like.
Yeah.
If all your buddies are in there worshiping Baal, somebody sets the. Oh, I shouldn't say this. Somebody sets the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah.
And then,
hey, one other thing I'd just like to say about sacrifice. I mean, there is evidence that some of those pagan gods, went into child sacrifice, and even Israel. There's evidence in the Bible that Israel took part in some of that also. So definitely, God was different on that. Thank goodness.
Yeah, Milcom, which is another name for Molech, was one of the gods that they sacrificed their firstborn to. As a matter of fact, if you go back and you read about Jericho, when they were building Jericho, the king buried his firstborn in the foundation.
Yeah.
In two different places. So I guess one was the firstborn and one was the surviving son. And so, it got pretty bad. So the judges did their best to, hang on to the people. And one of the last judges, who's not really considered a judge, but he was by his actions, is a guy named Samuel. And you all remember the story about Samuel. Samuel's mom dedicated him to God. And so he went to live and to learn from Eli. And Eli appointed his sons as judges over Israel. Bad move. Really, really, really bad move. These two guys were, as a matter of fact, somewhere I probably have these scriptures. Okay, this one just talks about him raising up judges. And then it says when it came about when Samuel was old that he appointed his sons judges. But they didn't walk in his ways. They didn't walk in the ways of God. Mm-hmm. But they turned aside after dishonest gain. They charged for their services, if you will. They took bribes and perverted justice. And then all the elders of Israel.
How is that any different than today? Yeah, with corruption, you have corruption in governments. Maybe ours is maybe not as bad as a lot of people in the world, but there's still that corruption.
Yeah, I don't think it's much. It's much different. It's hard. It's hard to make a salary of $250,000 a year for 10 years and become a multimillionaire. They're better at investing money than I am. I can tell you that. Mm-hmm. It's because they're paid on the side. They're paid by people. I don't want to talk to Brent Kern. Brent on the phone. But yeah. And so they went to Eli to Samuel and said, you're an old man. You can't control your sons. So we want a king. Mm-hmm. All the nations around us have kings, and the king leads them in battle. The king is in their fancy clothes. The king, and all we've got is you in your robe. And so Samuel wasn't happy about that. It says the thing was displeasing to him. And they said, give us a king to judge us. And so Samuel prayed to God and said, look, these people want a king. What am I going to do? And God said to Samuel, listen to the voice of the people. They haven't rejected you, Samuel. Don't take it personally. They rejected me because they don't want me to be their king. And, if you think about it, God was their king. And he fought their wars for them. He did everything for them. If they weren't happy, they wanted to be able to see someone. Okay. And so then God says, all right, look, here's what's going to happen. These people want a king. We're going to give them a king. But here's what's going to happen. They're going to take your sons and put them in the army. They're going to be foot soldiers running before the chariots. He's going to make commanders of thousands and fifties, and they're going to make them farm for him, plow up, reap his harvest, make weapons, and he's going to take your daughters and put them to work, and he's going to take the best of your fields and your vineyards, and your olive groves, and give them to his servants. And he's going to take 1/10 of your seed and your vineyards and give it to his officers and to his servants. And God was telling Samuel, you need to go tell the people this. And then he goes on, and I'm not going to read all of that. You all can read this. Mm-hmm. He's telling them, you're not going to be happy with this king. And so in verse 21, it says, now after Samuel had heard all the words of the people who said, we don't care. We want a king. Then Samuel went back and told God what they had said. Now, I think that's kind of an interesting phraseology because God already knew what they said.
Mm-hmm.
But Samuel went back and he said, you know, Father, I don't really know what to do here. This is what the people want. They've heard what you had to say. Now what? And Yahweh said to Samuel, hearken to their voice and make them a king. They're going to regret it, but make them a king. Give them what they want. And so they did. And here's the timeline again. The first king was Saul, and Saul turned out to not be a good king at all, as I know you all know that. Everybody on here knows that. And he replaced Saul with a man after God's own heart, a man named David, who was a very good king. Now, one of the things that David did, it was pretty much custom that a king would marry ladies from the nations around them to get a coalition for an army, and so David would do that. And these women that he married had their own gods. They worshiped Baal. They worshiped Asherah. They worshiped Chemosh. They worshiped Molech. They worshiped, but you know what David didn't do? David didn't let them teach that or pass it down to the people. And one of the kings that we're going to see later on, who was one of the rottenest kings that Israel ever had, the northern tribes, is a man named Ahab. And he married a woman named Jezebel that came from Phoenicia. And she brought her gods with her and brought her dad with her. And we'll get into this later on if you all ever have me back. She was allowed to be a priestess, and her dad was a priest, and they really messed things up during Ahab's reign. And you can see right here, Ahab's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the eighth king. And if you'll notice right here, I hope everybody can see this. See how short these terms were?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the kings in Israel reigned for such a short time, they didn't even have time to have the cards printed up.
Hey, Skip, just for the audience looking at your chart, you're picking things up after Solomon's reign, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, but we're going to go back. I'm just throwing that out for now. But yeah, right here where if you look, it says Solomon right here. Solomon died. Solomon's son Rehoboam became king because the king had to be a descendant of David. And so Solomon wanted to build the temple. And so he taxed the people heavily. And so when Solomon died, the people thought, oh, good, we've got everything we need for the temple. Solomon's not going to be taxing us anymore. And they went to Rehoboam. And they said, okay, Rehoboam, your dad about killed us with these taxes. And we don't want to pay him anymore. And so Rehoboam went and he went to two different sets of counselors. He went to one set of counselors, which were the old wise elders who said, "Hey, the people are right. It's been bad. Your dad really taxed them hard. You need to back off." And then he went to his buddies, and his buddies said, "No, don't stop. Make it worse." And so Rehoboam goes back to him and said, "My dad." Uh, uh, I don't remember the scripture, but anyway, I'm going to chastise you with scorpions. In other words, I'm going to make it worse than my dad made it when he was the king, when he was raising money to build the temple. And so a man named Jeroboam, who was, I think he was a cousin, if you will, of David or of Solomon, um, he came up and the people said, "Hey, Jeroboam, you need to lead us because we're not going to follow David's descendants anymore." And if you remember the scripture, it says, "To your own house, King David," or David's descendants, "you take care of yourselves. We're going off on our own." And this is the split where, David, Solomon, it was a united kingdom. But when Solomon died and Rehoboam made everybody mad, the 10 tribes in the north said, "We're not going to listen to you anymore. We're on our own." And they got Jeroboam to be their leader. And the tribes in the south stuck with the descendant of David. And so Rehoboam was their leader. So you had 10 up in the north and 2 in the south. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but one of the first things that Jeroboam did was to have 2 golden calves created, made, whatever. He put one in the north in Dan, and he put one in the south in Bethel. I think that's right. I don't have this in my notes, but I'm pretty sure that's right. And so what he said was, the people shouldn't have to go all the way down to Jerusalem to worship on the holy days. I'm going to make it easy for them. So we've got a spot in the south of the south part of the north and the north part of the north, and you all just go to those places and worship and keep the holy days. Oh, and by the way, we're going to change the dates of some of these holy days. Now, we don't have any scriptural proof of this. I'm out on a limb. But we know that he changed the dates of the Feast of Tabernacles. He went to the 8th month instead of the 7th month. Now, I have what I consider to be proof of this. Jeroboam was a skier, and he wanted the feast to be later so there'd be snow up in the mountains. So sorry.
Again, we put that qualifier up at the beginning of the program. These comments are not. Yeah. That's just Skip being funny. But Skip, we're getting close to the end of today's program. I'm going to let Olivia and Jeff think about their closing comments. They may want to run by you. But one thing I got from today's program, Skip, I'm working on a new sermon about free will. And what hit me today about what you've been talking about, this introduction, is, I thought back to Adam and Eve in the garden and, God let them do their own thing. Now, when we get to Israel, they come out of Egypt, they go into the land, God has it all set up for them, and God's not forcing them. He's letting them make their own decisions. Again, I don't know how you can't see free will in the Bible. I may use that in my sermon, but do you agree with my assessment here that God is letting, people throughout history decide for themselves which way they're going to go here?
Absolutely. And it's still that way today. You know, we don't have to obey God if we don't want to. It's not smart, you know, to not obey God, but you know, God wrote His law in our hearts. Anyway, I agree. Olivia, did you have
Yeah, thank.
something?
Well, I want to say thank you for a good presentation. Certainly opened up
Thanks.
some deep thinking for us to look at. But a lot of the comparisons, when you're talking about the prophets, it sounds so not that how to describe this. It kind of parallels a believer, but not that we are prophets, but in that the messages we give are not always popular. As a matter of fact, they're not popular with the outside world at all. And yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of learning that goes with that when people disagree with you. And like you were saying, Mike, about free will, it's a choice. And when people don't like you, to make that choice to keep on saying what God says is true and to keep on going, that's what builds character too. And the prophets certainly illustrated the value of being so close to God that He speaks directly to you. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, actually, you're not going to believe this, but I actually did get to the end of my notes. I'm a note. Is Blake still on here? Yeah, Blake's still on here. I give Blake a hard time.
Mhm.
I, you know, I speak from notes. If I drop my notes, I'm in trouble. Okay. Blake, on the other hand, he gets a microphone and he just walks around making stuff up. You know, I kid him about that all the
He'll be
time.
back to defend himself in the future.
Yeah, he will. He will. I think I have a couple of sentences to go through if y'all don't mind.
Yes.
Uh, I've got in my notes. I said, here's something that came clear as we continued our study, you know, for the last 2 years of Israel. As we got deeper into the happenings of Israel and Judah, our study became more of a study of the history of the two nations rather than just the prophets. Now we're going to cover the prophets too, if you all want me to do it more. But we're going to find a whole bunch of men and a couple of women that are not listed as prophets, but they're going to show up. They make their pronouncements, and we never hear of them again.
Mm-hmm.
So if we do continue this, if you all do have me come back and do another part two, you know, that's kind of the direction that we'll go. So
Yeah, I think we will, Skip. We got you scheduled next month, so I think I'd like you to just continue on this tact. Okay.
okay,
Okay.
this
Over to you, Jeff.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good. Thank you, Skip. How many prophets do you think there were, like in different times? I'm thinking of the story with the man of God who was going to go prophesy against the altar, and you don't even get his name. You just call the man of God. And there's this other older prophet who lies to him. You don't even get his name either.
right.
So, like, how many prophets do you think there were at the time? You
Oh,
know?
I'll bet you. You know, in what we've seen, I'm going to say there's 50 people who are called prophet.
Yeah.
You know, and by the way, I'm not one of those. Just in case you all,
Yeah.
we're getting the wrong
But
impression.
wasn't there a school of prophets? I remember reading that in scripture.
Yes,
So
we will.
the sons of the prophets or
We'll,
whatever. So
we'll
it's a
cover
lot.
that in like part 4. if we get to part 4, you know, one of the problems with doing a series on a program like this is 20% of the people will die before we ever get through with it, and I may be one of them. But
Hang in there,
yes,
Skip.
the school of the prophets was when Elisha was
Right.
the main prophet.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So there may have been a lot more prophets that we just aren't even aware of.
Oh yeah, and thank you, Olivia, because I wasn't even thinking about the school of the prophets when I said, you know, 60 or so.
Yeah.
The school of the prophets came to Elisha and said, "Hey, we've outgrown the house. We need a new house. Build us a new house."
Mm.
And that's what they did. So,
quite a few. All right, Skip. Do you any words you want to leave us with before we go today?
no, I love talking about this. You'll see a smile on my face. You remember I love talking about the Apostle Paul, and I've enjoyed this study that we've done in our home fellowship, and I'm going to have to make major changes in it. If we go forward. So, well, you say, you got me down for next month. So,
all right, yeah. Again, thank you again for being with us. Thank you, Olivia, for co-hosting today.
Great.
Definitely good to have
Enjoyed
your
it.
input as well.
thanks for having me.
You
All
got it.
right, we'll say goodbye to
Good.
everybody, and we'll see everybody next week.
Bye bye.
Bye.